Hello, drivers. I am glad to see you. This is the brand new episode of the Top Drive Show. This time it's the August Q&A where we're answering some of the best questions you guys have submitted to us in the previous video. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Hi, my name is Dimitri. I'm a community manager here at Top Drives.
I'm Jonathan, and I'm design director here at Hutch.
And I'm Tim, and I'm in charge of marketing and analytics at Hutch.
Well, thank you very much, guys, for joining today. We have a cool episode, which is the August Q&A. I can't believe it's already August. It's a little bit crazy. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, not bad. I think the same as you. This whole year is turning out pretty odd. But yeah, just cannot believe we're sort of well into summer already. Had a little bit more summery weather, which is nice. But it's busy, that's good. And,
and doing the video like this just feels completely normal now. It's just like, this is how we do the show. Yeah, was forgotten what it was like.
I know, actually, going back to the sofas would feel quite strange now.
Yeah, radical. Afraid to sit too close to each other. Don't know when that will happen again.
Yeah, it's always been like that for me now.
Yeah. The only thing I'm doing to mix it up is trying to see the Comet Neo wires. That makes my day a little bit different. Go out and try and look in the sky. It's always cloudy. Has not worked so far. Might have done it by the time this video comes out. What's that?
How long is it meant to be visible for?
It's still a few more. So out through end of July and early August, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
That's interesting. So we have, I think, 6 or 7 questions we've picked from the previous Q&A for July. As always, everyone will get a carbon fiber pack whose questions we have picked for this Q&A. So we will provide those as soon as we can. And we will start with the first question from Andres Sima. He's asking, can the game please show the leaderboard after the events ended? After several days of hard racing, it would be nice to have a look at the board, see how the others finished, etc., etc.
Yeah, it would be nice. Yeah, I've seen that done in other games. I think that information is stored, right? It must be because we give you the prizes. So that just seems like a perfectly reasonable quality of life thing. I sometimes if you do a race right at the very end and you get your cars in too late, so the event has actually ended by the time you get your car in, you still see the match and you get to pick the cards, and then it shows you the leaderboard. Sometimes I like that because it's like, oh well, I can see now the leaderboard as it was at the end, because you don't get any points. It's just like, no, here's where you were. So that's like the current silly version of it. I think that's a very nice one to go on the quality of life list.
Yeah, probably fairly high up as well. I think it's just one of those things when they talk about the kind of the few days of hard racing, and it's that moment where you're kind of maximum engagement with Top Drives and other players, and it's definitely nice just to be able to kind of see where everybody ended up.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you. So Andres Simmer gets a CF pack. Next question is from Kevin Cray. Can you walk us through the car corrections process? So this question has been coming up quite often. It seems like there is a lengthy process that we as players get frustrated when there are inaccuracies in the cars. Can you please discuss the process of making car performance-related changes, such as weight, 0 to 60 tires, and non-performance related changes, such as number of seats, pictures, car names, etc.?
Yeah, so I'll try and frame this discussion. So definitely, completely get, I think we've talked a lot about how the Top Drive, we're absolutely striving for accuracy. It was always sort of what we talk about as a pillar of the game. This was meant to be this sort of authentic experience. So we absolutely get that, and we are, the only reason it's not there is really logistics and time, but then definitely no sort of lack of kind of motivation to do that. So we trying to think the best way to kind of frame it really in a fairly brief way. But there's obviously a central car database, which absolutely everything sits in. So that's all the performance stats, model year, image names, and also the kind of non-performance stuff. So kind of sort of number of seats and fuel type and things like that. So that all lives in one huge document.
I counted it, by the way. There's 55 columns for each car.
Okay.
55 data points. A lot of those are the performance fingerprint, like exactly what else might make it good on sand or something. But yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah. So a huge amount of data sort of in a single place that needs to be read by the game. So in the past when we started, car corrections would come up from all over the place. I mean, there'll be stuff that we were spotting on the team. I think there were two different. There was sort of the forum stuff, and then there was the kind of in-game forum side as well. And there would be corrections sort of scattered around, and sort of as best as possible, we would try and kind of group those into a single document, and then we'd almost kind of assign certain periods of time when people on the team would go through and try and apply those corrections. We have definitely benefited from some. A small number of the community have become sort of highly active and are kind of critical members of the sort of production correction pipeline now, and just do an absolutely incredible job of that shepherding of discussion and kind of collating of correction data for us, and that really has made an absolutely massive difference. So we're still not there. We still want to get more in, but behind the scenes, it's incredible how much that has impacted things in terms of the accuracy of the game. So what that gives us really is a large correction document that has the correct, the car, the year, the correction all listed out, and also source material. That's probably one of the biggest things is actually what the correction is, but also sourcing the new information, as in why does it need to be corrected, and what's the kind of level of new data that we've got. And sometimes it will be from the manufacturer themselves. They'll have done a new acceleration run, but other times it's sort of referencing all sorts of different channels, things like that. Then we go through. We do them in batches, really, in terms of big corrections. The reason why we can't say change seat number independent of say performance stuff is just the way the game is built. That data all lives in as I say, a kind of central sort of repository, and when it gets imported, it brings everything with it. So we're basically making that's why we do it in batches, really, because it is a huge operation to run the performance resolver work. When we're changing, even if we change one car, we need to run that process again. So sorry, it's quite long-winded. It's not a brief answer at all. But anyway, that is the reason, really. So it's a big process. The community are several members of the community have really transformed it in recent months. And the reason why we can't just do quick individual changes is just the way the game is built. Everything needs to be brought in at once. But I think with the next update, hopefully people will be quite pleased with just the sheer quantity of corrections, because it's the most we've ever done by a considerable margin.
Yeah, and also I know there's people out there who don't like corrections as well. They're like, why did this change? I can't believe this thing changed. And I feel like doing it in batches is the best compromise. You go for a long time, there's no corrections, everything is as it is, and then it's like, okay, now here's a bunch, bomb. And you adapt to that. So I feel like it's the reasonable way to do it.
Thank you very much for the answer. And yes, as you guys have both said, this is a very sensitive topic for players, so we're definitely want to address that. Next question is from Kelreyes. Sometimes when I'm matching my cards to my opponent's hand, I misplace a card. I have to reset the whole hand with the reset button. What if we could juggle the cards already placed? Like move a card from one slot to another would be much more handy than resetting the whole hand and placing all 5 cards from the start. So this has come up a couple of times. Yeah.
Right. Just like another quality of life thing. Because you remember it was quite a surprising change that we did, when was it? Last year, where previously you had to drag the cards in exact order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's almost incomprehensible now. It was like that for so long. You're like, well, this one's definitely going on race 4, and you just had to remember that and then figure out the rest. And now you can at least put that in while you figure out the rest. So that's great. And this is like the next level of that, right? It's like, oh, I want that one to go there and that one to go there. Just another quality of life thing, right? That seems...
Yeah. Actually, there's a little bit of prototyping going on at the moment for something completely unrelated, but it has a similar sort of selection type idea, but actually has a little minus button on the cards that you've put up, or the units that you put up. And actually, it's funny how much that just changes things, being able to quickly sort of pull them down again. I mean, just very briefly, I mean, it sort of goes right back to the early development of top drives. The challenges around communication and making it easy and understandable to place your cards, because obviously we want to show those tips at the right point. That's quite a big part, is what the challenge is and what the tips are for that challenge. And actually it's a surprisingly complex problem to solve. But no, I think as you say, Tim, I mean, particularly as the game has matured, as the community has sort of matured, and it feels like it absolutely should go on the quality of life list.
Yeah. So, I mean, another one, this is getting kind of speculative, but I've seen other games where there's 2 methods as well. There's the drag and there's also tap.
Yeah.
Which is kind of easier. But then if you're tapping, do you tap and then tap where you want it to go? I don't know. There's open questions around that. But there could be another quality of life review of the car placing.
Yeah.
That should be there. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. So thank you very much. And I think it was Calres is definitely getting a CF pack. So next question is from Andras Canaris. I have this question for Tim, actually. The question is, I have an idea to make the bottom end cars of each rarity more appealing to upgrade. So instead of the rarity requirement, there could be a minimum RQ limit for the free fusible cars. For example, you'd need 3 cars with a combined RQ of 190 to upgrade a RQ 79 car, but only a combined RQ of 160 to upgrade an RQ 66 car. So this would allow more flexibility in upgrading cars, and would also encourage to max the bottom end cars of each rarity by making the better ones harder to upgrade.
Yeah. So I've seen a version of that posted occasionally, and because it sounds like it's like the most fair thing. It's got as much granularity as RQ does, but it is a little bit complicated, right? It's more complicated, and in particular with the granularity of RQ now. I feel, imagine like you've got to fill it up with 180 worth of RQ of cars, and you go, well, here's my food, do 182, and then. So, well, that should do it, right? But then you feel like, that 2 RQ is wasted. I need a food that's 17 instead of 19, or whatever you're doing. And so then you try and sort that out. And then maybe you don't have one. Then you think, I really need it. All right, I'll do it. And I'll waste that 2 RQ. And that doesn't, I worry that it makes it all too fiddly and it doesn't feel as good, even though it's fairer. The version I prefer that I've seen is that there would be cutoffs for the rarity bands needed. So, perhaps for the lowest epics, you can do the first 3 fuses using only super rares, and the last 2 fuses require ultra rares instead of all of them. And then as you go up, more and more of the fuses require ultra rares. That level of granularity feels, it's more similar to what we already have. It's easier to get your head around. I feel like that would be the way to go, rather than this very granular system. I can see there's advantages to it, but I feel like the complexity would make it too not feel as good ultimately.
Still a great question. So next 2 questions are from the same person, James Kevin Cabernet. So the first question is, hi, have you ever tried to do a 1x speed on the game when watching cars duel? I want to see them, especially in Nürburgring, especially when opportunity arises when I can put an Zeta in there.
Yes, I'm just going to watch that for I don't know how long. How long will the Zeta take?
Long time. I remember when Nürburgring first went in and we ran it in the snow with a slow car, and it's 45 minutes to get round or something. But no, I mean we have obviously sort of again early days top drives. A lot of discussion, a lot of prototyping around what the playback speed should be. I've actually always loved the idea that kind of potentially sort of tapping on the right of the screen, either skips or sort of fast forwards as it does at the moment, and sort of holding down on the left would slow it down to 1x if you just want to kind of watch something in detail. It is always incredible actually how slow real life speed is. I know everybody was at the star in the car in Top Gear. Whenever anybody went onto it and watched the footage of them driving backwards, they were always like, I just look so slow, because it just does. So it definitely, we need to be careful that it doesn't, it's not, it lowers the kind of excitement levels a little bit. I think the reason it hasn't gone is that, I mean, they're different a little bit, but and it's come up before, but there's a slightly kind of bigger discussion about like a race summary screen or sort of telemetry, or maybe allowing players to bring up telemetry, because the game generates kind of great telemetry graphs. So there's a slightly bigger discussion about, is there a kind of real-time high fidelity information mode if you really want to study what's going on? And so it's one of those things where, again, that becomes a slightly bigger task, and then it's harder for that to kind of pop up to the top of the list and actually make it in the game. So yeah, I mean, good, that definitely sort of comes up from time to time, and it will stay on the list somewhere, but probably not for the foreseeable future. But yeah, good question.
Thank you. And the next question from James as well. So this is quite an interesting question. So hi, the question says, hi, we noticed you started implementing a trophy bracket separation over the last Call of the Wild event. Although it's been used now to separate newcomers and veterans, can this be implemented as a bracket separation feature for the trophies, separating all players ranging from 10K to 20K, 30K plus in the future?
Right. So, yeah, you spotted something interesting there. I should clarify. The thing about it is, so we already do trophy-based matchmaking, but what was different there was we were able to give the higher trophy brackets a different prize set. So, and the idea of that was like the stage where you're collecting those common Jaguars to progress through the challenge. In the first version of it, we did with Silver Screen, the matchmaking was fully open, and so anybody, earlier in their top tries career, it was really difficult because they were up against everybody. So it's like, oh, the matchmaking should be fairer, but then it was like, oh, but if you're in an upper bracket, then it could become really, really hard to get all the Jaguars you need. So like, okay, we can make an upper bracket, but more of the players in that bracket get Jaguars, so then the competition is better, but it's fairer. So that is the advance. And in theory, we could apply that to further events, right? There could be, higher trophy bracket gets better prizes, and that makes up for it. That would address something players have been talking about for a long time, right? Which is like, I feel like if I just collect trophies, I'll just get punished. And newer players going like, oh, I can't believe I lost all these trophies. I worked so hard for them. And old players going, you don't know how lucky you are. You don't want those trophies. They're bad. And so it feels like, there could be a reason, like you've got more trophies, and there's a better thing there, which happens for an RQ, but not trophy. So that's now there. The limitation on it is just the bandwidth of setting everything up. Like we're running way more now than we used to, right? You probably noticed with these additional events as well, like Call of the Wild and Silver Screen, and more events in a week, loads more going on. This is all just bandwidth of those events being designed and set up, and adding in the whole trophy bit and the different prizes is an additional amount of work on top of that. So that's why it isn't something we've just immediately started doing. It is there in principle. So that's that. I should take this as an opportunity to seg into matchmaking as well. Generally, this is one of the recurring questions. I wanted to highlight, I saw this post on Reddit by Metal Charon, right? I was like, this is great. They explained it way better than I did. When you're like, I want, I've got 9,000 trophies and I'm facing people with 50,000. That seems ridiculous. Why can't they be in a bracket above me? And what this person points out, they're like, okay, so there could be problems because of how many players there are at the top end. And it's true. There's not actually that many with these huge numbers of trophies. So like, okay, well, they would always be in the same bracket. They'd always be against the same players every time. This already happens to an extent in our Asia region because there aren't as many players there. So you sort of get a preview of that. Brackets might not fill up. So if the top bracket only had 600 players and we had a 500 player bracket, there would be 2 instances of that created because that's how it works. And they would each fill up to 300 people. So then the whole prize distribution would be different. They would have an advantage there. They'd be getting even better cars than ever, already being the best players. And then, but the most important one is like this idea that you're just pushing your problems to a later date. You're like, okay, I don't want to be up there with those guys. They should be in their own thing. So then you're up against much easier people. And then, so you win more easily. And so you gain trophies quicker. And within a few weeks or months, you then graduate out into that shark pool that you asked for. And now that pool, that end one, is actually even harder than it is now. So things would be better for you for a little bit. And then forever, for the rest of your top prize life, they would be harder than they would have been otherwise. So that's the reason we want to keep the top bracket fairly open-ish, just so that in the long run, it's just not totally insane. If it was just like, what would I say would be the maddest? 20,000 up, that would just be just absolute carnage. There would just be no chance. So that's the reason. I thought that was good. Yeah. Thanks, Metal Karen. Yeah.
And thanks, Tim. Last question we have, just a mention of a marketplace for car cards in the game. So this question was posted under the previous video by Ovchikosul, and he said a marketplace where players sell cars without the sell from garage thing or a trade feature where players can trade cars. Basically, can we have a market?
Yeah, exactly. So I think we should just address this periodically because it always comes up, right? Mm-hmm. So just briefly, the thing I always say, who benefits? What do you want to do from this? If everybody can do it, then is there an advantage? Probably the people with the most resources could get even better. The competitiveness of the best hand you need to have in a given event would go up because people can figure out better ones. The exploitability of it is a big concern if people get other accounts and trade stuff with them. And then you could put in lots of rules to like reduce how much it can be exploited. You could say, oh, you can only trade same rarity for same rarity, or you can't even trade cars that are under any criteria for current events or something. You can put all these things, but then you're just diluting more and more the benefit and the features. And it's like, why is it even here? If you all the controls you'd need to put in to stop it from being exploitable, stop it also from being interesting or fun. So generally, I've seen a lot of players try and go, no, but what if you put this rule in, or what do you manage it this way? And very often other players come back and point out the problems with it. So I think it feels like one of those things at the beginning of the game, especially, you're like, oh, this should clearly exist. And then when you've been with the game for a while and you've gone through all of this, you're like, yeah, that would be really problematic, actually. There is not really a good way to do it, unfortunately. I think the nicest thing we've added is just the Yellowbird Championship, that there are some cars there where it's like, if you want a car, well, it's there. It's there. So, there's a drop rate for it if you repeat that championship match, and you might be able to get it. And so there is at least that way for some cars to go, if you want this one, play this one repeatedly and it should drop. So at least we have that. That's pretty good. That's about all we can offer.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I think just as really sort of reiterating what you're saying, but yeah, that kind of the fairness and the balance, the kind of economy is such a challenging thing for, I think, sort of any game team. As in just to try and make things fair, and so having the possibility of something that unbalances that or is slightly out of our control is difficult. And I think the games that generally, there are games out there that offer trading and things like that. I think they almost need to be built from scratch around the trading concept for it to really work. I think having sort of, I say normal economy, but a sort of non-trading economy or balance sitting with a trading or adding a trading feature to it is just a very, very difficult thing to get right. So.
Yeah.
Yes, so I think it's time for last section, and it's quite exciting as usual, which is the bonus question from John. So, John.
Sure, I'm just going to bring it up. So yes, some great responses to this. So the question was, what is the one concept car from Top Drives that you just wish had made it all the way through and actually been produced? So the first one we're going to go with is from Tilman Protzner, and yeah, I'd absolutely agree with this. Is the Maserati birdcage concept. So I think probably a lot of people know the Maserati, but the original birdcage went in as the first ever Sub-Zero car into Top Drives. Just almost definitely the greatest looking sort of race car of all time. I'm sure some people will disagree, but an absolutely beautiful car. And I think what was amazing about the concept that they produced, I mean, it's just an incredible shape. I mean, sort of having something so clearly reference an old design, but bring it right up to date is a, you know, not a car designer, but I imagine is a huge challenge to stop it just ending up looking like a kind of pastiche or something that's overly retro. And it's nice to see, you know, supercars are lovely, and you know, there's some variety, but a lot of them can sort of share quite similar proportions. And I think that birdcage concept, it was amazing reference to the past, but also just looked utterly kind of fresh and unlike anything else. So great, great choice there. Number two, we've got Thomas Studer. He is actually sort of following on from his the response to the last question, and going with the Cadillac 16 again. So that was sorry, I'm just going to be interrupted for a second.
Well, I'll just let you know, my pick would be the Renault Desire, by the way. So as
Yes.
well as being a great specialist in Top Drives, it looks like it will be great. It looks really good. The performance is fairly modest, so I would hope it would be affordable in production. That would just be an amazing.
Do you know one thing? I'm sorry, Wolf, but do you know one interesting thing about Desire I noticed is that it was a concept car back in 2010. And if you look outside right now, you will see that most Renault cars, their front and back ends look exactly like Desire. While
really?
All the cars from, including Kadjar, for example, while the 2010 cars, such as Captur, back in 2010 looked completely differently. They looked outdated. So most new Renaults look very, very similar to the Zero. So they definitely follow up with their design. And I think they've actually had 3 concept cars from the same sort of areas, four in fact. The Zero was one of them, and they were supposed to be representing different stages of human life. So that's a little fact.
Wow.
And the Zero was supposed to mean love, I think. And so,
yeah, nice.
That's an amazing car. Apologies for that interruption. Actually, I'm sort of surprised that hasn't happened on more of these shows so far, but that was the first proper one. But yeah, sorry, just going back briefly. Yeah, Cadillac 16 coming up again. Actually, they point out that they think if it ever got made, it would have depreciated massively. So you could probably pick one up for not very much and have a lovely 1,000 brake horsepower V16 car to roll around in. It's definitely is one of my pet one of my favorite car related pastimes is just I'm trying to find those cars that are generally kind of, I don't know, they've got a huge engine or something that have just depreciated so much that you could just pick them up for hardly anything. So always fun on Auto Trader. Next one is, I don't even have it, Gewerbone. And just says it's a very easy question for them, and it has to be the Stratos, Lancia Stratos. Again, great choice. It's another of those, you know, bit like the kind of birdcage concept. It's another of those just absolutely classic shapes. Sort of, it kind of nobody else really went down that road. A Stratos, you know, the original Stratos just is instantly identifiable and still stands out in any sort of car show, you know, no matter what's around it. And I think that sort of modern Stratos concept, I mean, it stuck actually very closely to the original looks, but I think in that case it didn't matter because they still look fresh and still look modern. And it just did that thing where it just cleaned up the detailing beautifully, but kept those amazing proportions. So yeah, another great car. And then finally, from the Kraken HW is the Chevy Aerovet. I think definitely wins the prize for the best concept car name. They just say that the idea of an American mid-engine supercar back then, it just seems very, very cool. I think it's probably somebody could probably talk in more detail about this, but yeah, it's almost got that retro futuristic thing that it does. Yeah, it just looks, for the time, it must have just looked so out there, and would be another. I mean, yeah, if it ever got made, it was sort of another very, very cool way to cruise around in. So yeah, those were some really good answers for that. And yeah, just the next bonus question. So I think I maybe sort of mentioned in one of the previous shows. So one of the good things that's sort of started up again are track days, and we are fortunate enough to have a couple of tracks not too far from Hutch's home base. So we a few of us got out about a week ago, I think, down to Brands Hatch for the first track day of the year. And actually, maybe it was because it was just one of the first ones in a while, but there was an amazing selection of cars there, and it just got us thinking of kind of, if you had to, I don't know if, for people who do track days or at least know what they are, but what if you had to pick one? I'm going to go top drives again. Maybe there's bonus points if you go with top drives, but anything's allowed. But yeah, if you had to pick one car for either a track day or maybe even to do a little bit of sort of grassroots racing in, what would it be really? And I think the reason was this is that I don't think it's about all out speed. I mean, it's fine if somebody wants to suggest an M8 GTE, that's fine, and maybe for some people it is about speed. But I think it's, at this track there were a bunch of kind of track prepared hot hatches. There was Ferrari California. There was there's always about 4 or 5 Caterhams. But there was a Tesla Model S that was absolutely flying, like nothing could touch it on the straights. And there was a guy there in his Morgan, just looking like he was having a great time. It wasn't the fastest thing on track, but he was having a great time out on the circuit. So yeah, if you had to pick one car for circuit use, what would it be?
That's not necessarily to win, right? So that's just
not with a focus on to set a lap time or to definitely be first. I think, to be honest, I think it's probably the reason that historic racing is so huge. And actually, a lot of people. Okay, you probably need to, maybe some of the people with slightly more financial liquidity in life. But I think what sometimes happens is they go sort of into modern racing, and then almost graduate from that into historics, because I think it's probably for the pure driving pleasure rather than setting incredible lap times. So yeah, it just got us thinking about so not focusing on lap times, but what would be your circuit car of choice and why?
That is a fantastic question. Thank you both for joining. We will see you in the next episode, which I don't know what exactly is going to be. Perhaps it's going to be the Q&A, perhaps something else. But thank you very much for taking the time to join, both of you. And goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
So that's it for today. And for this month, the August Q&A is done. Please do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow the social links above me. And thank you very much, John and Tim, for joining this video. And we will see you in the next episode of the Top Drive Show.